She remembered the sky as though it had been part of her blood, as though the vast, endless blue was something she had once carried inside her. Her wings had been her pride, her birthright, their feathers shimmering with a radiant silver fire that caught the light of dawn and dusk alike. When she flew, her people sang hymns to honor her, their princess whose body seemed sculpted from the heavens themselves. But that was before the fall, before her enemies bound her with chains and dragged her down to the dirt, before they tore her wings away with cruel hands and left her bleeding beneath the stars she could no longer reach. For days she lay in silence, her body trembling, her heart shattered, the phantom pain of her wings burning hotter than the wounds themselves. She thought her life had ended the moment she could no longer fly, because for her kind flight was not just movement, it was identity, it was status, it was everything. A wingless one was no one. A wingless one was less than an outcast, less than a beggar, less than alive. And so she believed she would wither away. But fate has a way of moving in places where despair believes it has sealed every path. It was not her own people who came for her. They had left her to die, their voices turned from her cries, their faces cold with shame at the sight of her mutilated form. It was a human soldier, dirt-smeared and weary, who found her crumpled body among the wreckage of the battlefield. His boots crunched against the broken stone as he approached, his weapon lowered when he realized she was not a threat, merely a trembling figure drowning in agony. She remembered his face, scarred from too many wars, eyes too kind for someone who had seen so much cruelty. He knelt before her, his shadow falling across her trembling form, and he whispered words she did not understand, but whose tone carried something deeper than language. She flinched when he touched her shoulder, expecting mockery, expecting pain. Instead, he lifted her gently, as though she were something fragile yet precious, something worth saving. She fought weakly, tried to protest. For what use was a broken-winged princess? But he carried her anyway, his arms steady despite the weight of armor, his heartbeat strong against her cheek. He did not see her as useless. He did not see her as shamed. He saw her as alive. And that was enough. In the human camp, she felt like a ghost wandering among flames. Their machines rattled, their tents smelled of iron and smoke, their laughter rang harsh and bright. She could not understand their words, but she understood the way they looked at her, not with disdain, but with a curiosity edged by compassion. The soldier who had carried her there tended her wounds himself, his hands surprisingly delicate as he bound her back, cleaned the dried blood, and covered her trembling body in warm cloth. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw her wings again, saw the moment they had been ripped from her flesh, saw the feathers scattered in the mud. She would weep silently, curling in on herself, ashamed of the tears, ashamed of her brokenness. But whenever the soldier noticed, he would kneel beside her, not speaking, only offering the quiet comfort of his presence. Sometimes he would give her a small piece of bread or a steaming cup of broth. Other times he would sit and sharpen his blade, humming softly, a sound steady and grounding, as though reminding her that the world had not ended. Time became strange. She could not tell how many days passed, how many nights she lay awake watching the stars blur overhead. But slowly, she began to see the humans differently. They were not winged, yet they ran tirelessly across battlefields. They were not radiant, yet their fire burned in their eyes. They could not soar through the skies, yet they climbed mountains, they sailed oceans, they reached for the stars with iron ships and endless determination. Their strength was not born of feathers, it was born of will. And as she watched them, something stirred faintly in her chest, something like the echo of a heartbeat long thought gone. The soldier, she had learned his name now, though she could barely form the sounds, would sometimes gesture to the horizon, miming flight with his hands, then point to her heart. At first she did not understand. But then one evening as the sun painted the sky gold, he stood atop a cliff and spread his arms wide. He leaned forward into the wind, eyes closed, his body held as though he too were ready to leap into the heavens. And in that moment she saw it, not flight of wings, but flight of spirit. He did not need feathers to feel free. His soul carried him higher than any sky. It struck her like a flame igniting dry wood. Her wings were gone, but perhaps that did not mean she could never soar again. She began to walk with him, at first unsteady, then stronger each day. He taught her to climb rocky paths, to run along ridges, to leap from stones with laughter spilling from his throat as though gravity itself was a game to be played. She fell many times, scraping her knees, bruising her palms, but each time he would reach down and pull her back up, his eyes urging her forward. And with each stumble, each climb, each desperate gasp of breath, she began to feel it, the wind rushing across her face, the dizzying height, the thrill of motion. It was not the same as her wings, but it was not lesser. It was different, and it was hers. One night, under a sky filled with countless stars, she sat beside him, her voice trembling as she spoke words she had never thought she could. She told him of her wings, of the songs her people had sung, of the way the sky had once embraced her. And then she told him of the moment they were taken, of the silence that followed, of the shame that had drowned her. Her voice broke, but he did not turn away. Instead, he placed his hand against hers, his warmth grounding her, his presence steady as stone. He told her, in words she could not fully understand, but whose meaning burned into her soul, that she was not broken. She was becoming something new. She was learning to soar again. And when she closed her eyes that night, she did not dream of torn feathers or bloodied skies. She dreamed of running with him across endless plains, of climbing mountains whose peaks touched the stars, of standing on the edge of the world with her arms spread wide, her heart beating like a drum, her spirit soaring higher than her wings ever had. For the first time since her fall, she was not afraid. She was alive. They had taken her wings, yes. But the humans had given her something greater, something her own people could not see. They had given her freedom beyond feathers, flight beyond skies. They had taught her that to soar was not to escape the earth, but to rise above despair, to embrace strength born of pain, to believe that even broken things could shine brighter than ever before. And so, though her back bore only scars where once silver fire had burned, she held her head high, her eyes gleaming, her laughter rising into the night. For she had learned the truth humanity had always known. Wings could be torn away, but spirit could never be chained. She had learned how to soar.